Welcome to this episode of Bright Ideas. I am Jess Duemig, the host of Bright Ideas, and today I'm here with Ariel Feigenbaum. Hi, Ariel. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So you are hours away from me. You are on the West Coast, one of the few West Coasters on this podcast. But you're not from the West Coast, so we'll let it slide a little bit. But you're in the Bay Area over in California, right?
I am, yes, originally a New Yorker, but I've been out here since 2013 now. So,
Wow. Does it fly or what?
yes, it's wild, but I still consider New York home in my heart.
Yeah, I hear you. I was born there and lived there for 2 years and then went back and lived and worked there for another 2 years. So 4 years total. And I'm like, yeah, I'm not a Floridian. Like, please. Um,
Yeah, fair.
it's a mindset, I think. Very, very
Yeah.
different. So you've got a tremendous background. So let's talk through it, right? You've got Wise, you've got Playbook for Health, you've got NIL background, you have a marketing company. Like, talk us through it. Where did it start? Where is it going? Tell us
Yeah,
about you.
it's been a really interesting journey that I probably couldn't have. I would have never bet on this being the journey. So it actually started when I was younger. My parents first owned an advertising agency when I was little, and then my dad became head of marketing for Blimpies, like the sandwich company.
Oh, okay.
And living in New York, they were sponsors of the Yankees, Madison Square Garden, the Rangers, that all of a sudden I got to be front seat of literally what I do now. I was, handing out a trophy to the hero of the month as one of my summer internships as a Blimpie intern, doing sponsorships, which is literally my job now.
Right.
But I went to UConn because I loved college sports and wanted to be in a college sports environment. Men's and women's national championships my freshman year and just got bit by the bug real hard.
Low
And then
key
I pivoted.
flex.
Yeah, no big deal. Um, and then I pivoted real hard, and I actually, my first job out of college, I was an assistant at Estee Lauder. So,
Okay.
like, Devil Wears Prada was my actual job, working in the beauty industry. Um, you know, couldn't even afford to wear the clothes fancy enough to go to certain floors in the building. My boss generously gave me hand-me-downs of her very fancy clothes so that I
Oh my
could look
God.
appropriate showing up for work in the early 2000s when I was just happy to have a job because of the crash and half my friends couldn't even get jobs.
Right.
And what I really loved about my time at Estee Lauder was I was assistant to really strong, powerful women from the very first start of my career. And sometimes it was really intimidating and scary, but overall, looking back, it was just so inspiring to see like how to do business as a woman. And as an
Right.
assistant, I just was like a fly on the wall watching these really strong women who'd been with the company for 20 some years make like power moves. And
Nice.
through that, I learned how to, set up meetings. What does like a conference room should look like? Things matter, where things sit on a table, how things are displayed, like attention to detail that I never in a million years would have trained an employee to do. You picked up from this like beautiful environment of working in beauty.
Yeah.
And then from there, the social media world, this makes me sound old, but the social media world was starting, and the world of creating like branded microsites was just kind of like becoming antiquated. And I had known people working at this social marketing agency called Mr. Youth at the time. They were youth marketing, like brand ambassadors, and they
Okay.
were jumping on the social media bandwagon real hard and real fast. And I was like, I want to do that. So I was at Estee Lauder for 3 years and then went and worked in social media when we were like building the plane as we were flying it. So
Wow.
I got lucky enough to be on the team that basically helped Visa shift from using social media as like a consumer service tool to actually being marketing at the London Olympics was the first time
Oh,
that they
cool.
ever really like marketed on social media. So I got to go be on the ground with my like BlackBerry sitting there and my like laptop computer that I had to borrow because I had a desktop computer at the time
Right.
at work and watch Michael Phelps hit the wall, write the tweet, send it to the 45 legal team so that when in the NBC broadcast in New York, 12 hours later, he hit the wall, it was a live social media post. And that process had never existed before.
Right.
And that's how I got into sports. And I've been working in sports ever since. So I was lucky enough to work on their NFL and Olympic programs, moved out to the Bay Area to be closer to the client. Like five of us moved out here. And as opposed to living on an airplane flying back and forth to Foster City, we moved to the Bay Area. And the rest is history. I made a really kind of, again, not planned pivot into healthcare because I kind of got the bug of wanting to work at a startup when I moved to the Bay Area. So I was pretty burnt
That if
out.
there's a place to do it, it's there.
Yeah, I was pretty burnt out after the Sochi Olympics. I was basically working like 6 days a week, 18 hours a day, and just couldn't really
Yeah.
do it anymore. And what I found was California had a very different approach to work-life balance than New York did. And I wanted in. I wanted to go hiking at 6 at night after work because Marin Headlands were 10-minute drive from my house and I could see them and I just wanted to be there so badly.
Oh, wow.
So I went to One Medical, which now is a huge, owned by Amazon company. But at the time, I think I was like employee 205 and just was brought on to run their social media. And I lucked out into sports again because our CMO was a sponsorship guy. He loved sponsorships. And we started using sponsorships as a way to establish the brand in new markets. So I spent a lot of time in Phoenix when we were opening our One Medicals in Phoenix, and I built an Arizona Diamondback sponsorship. And then as we were opening in Seattle, I was up there meeting with different teams, figuring out should we partner with someone to kind of introduce ourselves to the community. So I basically said, I'm probably the only person at the company that has the experience to do this, and I really enjoy it. So I built a role for myself, pivoted out of social media, and I kind of followed this path that someone gave me, which said, like, take the piece of your job you like the most and always just aim to do more of it and less of the
Mm,
thing you like the least. And I was like, I don't really like being a social media manager, but I like sports. Great. I like this company. I don't want to leave the company. I'm going to try to pivot my role within the organization and was able to
yeah.
do that pretty successfully. And then from there, transitioned over to Sutter Health, which is a multi-billion dollar, 500,000 employer, 50,000 employee company in the Bay Area, one of the largest health systems in the country, and ended up running all their corporate sponsorships. So,
Oh,
doing the
wow.
Jersey deal with the earthquakes, we sponsored the A's, we did the stadium deal in the River Cats. All of a sudden, I had this huge portfolio of Bay Area teams and had really successfully pivoted and said, I can work in healthcare and sports and kind of created, again, they created a role for me. This hadn't exist. No one had been doing it. And I think that that's kind of the overarching theme throughout my career is I love to kind of create roles and build them into what works with my strengths and what I think the company needs, as opposed to this is the role, these are the work streams, like go do your job and go home. Um,
Right.
so that was a lot of fun. I was at Sutter for 5 years. We launched mobile tours, we relaunched the brand, we did jersey deals. I met my husband through the earthquakes. So as the team sponsor, he worked for the team and we got introduced and foregoed all the online dating and actually met in real life
Lucky.
through work, which was very exciting. So I always say that, the earthquakes and the sports world holds a very special place in my heart because it, my whole life is now kind of centered around that. We both work in sports and we're very involved in the Bay Area sports community as a result, which is
Yeah.
a lot of fun.
That's
Um,
super cool.
yeah,
And
and
lucky you for
then
getting away from having to do the apps, man. It's
yes, I mean
torture.
I did that plenty as well, but it worked out. I always
Yeah.
say like it's there's hope out there. You just have to like look in places you didn't expect to look. Um, yeah, and then I left Sutter during the pandemic. As you can imagine, a nonprofit hospital spending millions on sports sponsorships wasn't really the right look,
Right.
which is okay. I'd been there 5 years and was ready for a change. And with that, I joined the founding team of a startup. And again, Bay Area startup world, like couldn't help myself. And became the COO and a co-founder of Peak NIL, which is an NIL marketplace, pretty much like an open doors competitor,
Hmm.
and did that for over 2 years, and really just took a risk and built something from scratch. Ultimately, stepped away because I don't think the startup world was necessarily for me. But, again, learned so much in this process of building something that didn't exist at all. Working with our CEO who built this incredible product from scratch based on his vision and getting to kind of be the person that operationalized that and said, how do we go to market? What does this look like to the sports industry? How do we position this differently? And they're still alive and well and hiring. And I think Blake Corum from the Chargers is now a co-founder with them, and
Oh,
the
nice.
the company's doing great and hiring and growing. So I love seeing it. And after I left Peak NIL, I found Playbook for Health. So Playbook's been around for over 15 years. They're pretty much the only sports marketing agency that specializes in healthcare. And it was like a no-brainer. I saw the
Yeah.
president of the company like poking on my LinkedIn, and I was like, why do I know that name? That's interesting. And it turns out we had connected before the pandemic because he wanted
Okay.
to work with Sutter. And I never got back to him because the pandemic happened and I left.
Right.
And so we got on the phone and I was like, "Oh, I would love to like learn more about you guys, maybe do some contract work." And then I got on the phone and just loved their vibe, their values so much that I was like, "I've changed my mind. You should hire me full time and let me run your account services team."
Nice.
And the rest is history. I've been there over a year. We're growing like crazy. Um, we have we pretty much touch like I think at least a quarter of the NFL teams out there. We're managing, billions of dollars in sponsorship agreements over the course of the
Wow.
years and working with most of the major sports teams with the major hospitals around the country. So it's been a wild ride and we're growing and hiring and constantly changing because we're a small agency that it was kind of this perfect, I always call it like I found the center of the Venn diagram of sports of health and healthcare, and it's the
Yeah.
most niche thing ever, and it's exactly perfect based on kind of my journey.
That's awesome. I mean, it feels like you've been um kind of in the like the front, the crest of the waves that have come, right? You were doing social media marketing before social media marketing. I mean, you're talking about I mean, Facebook is circa 2008 when it went mainstream, right? They didn't
Yeah,
add ads, like actual advertising for years. Maybe 2012 was the very, very start of that ahead of the
yeah,
Olympics. And really, I mean, for a lot of people watching this, I don't know that they realize that 24/7 news cycle wasn't quite a thing yet. There were
no,
no CNN alerts at 2 in the morning that Michael Phelps won one of his 12 medals or whatever the count was,
no,
right? So you were really at the front of that, the leading edge of that, evolving it, growing with it. And I totally get your perspective of like it was kind of old hat by the time you were done with it because it's fun when you're on the creating side, right?
yeah,
The forging the path. It's a little boring when it's like, all right, well, how do we one up it? And like you said, for
right,
Sochi, the expectation went from below the ground to way like skyrocket.
yeah. And the technology changed so much in those 2 years. We had Vine influencers making 6-second videos with Visa athletes after they were done competing. Like,
Yeah,
it's always what is the next thing? And you can't just use the same playbook year over year in the sports industry. It is
right.
so frequently changing. And that's something we do a lot of. And I think why we're called playbook is your playbook always needs to be changing and adjusting. And one NFL season should never look like the last one. We
Right.
should always be kind of looking at what's new.
Yeah. It's so cool though. I love your story about like just kind of the whole thread of doing more of what you like and kind of ditching what you don't, right? But never forgetting necessarily what you've learned in doing so. It makes you
Yeah.
that much more valuable at your next thing rather than being pissed off and bored and whatever, just sitting around doing the same. You're now taking the little bit from this and a little bit from this and applying it and evolving it across the board. I love that concept.
Thank you. Yeah, I've never been one to jump ship. I always stay at companies a long time. But I do believe in, advocating for yourself and like truly believing that an employer like wants you happy. They want
Yeah,
you to feel fulfilled in the work you're doing. And if you're in a role that you don't feel fulfilled, but you want to stay at the company and you believe in the company, first of all, it's less expensive for them. It's really expensive to recruit new employees. It's
right.
much less expensive to keep your current employees happy, but
Yeah.
also creating growth opportunities for people. Like, no one's very rarely is a company going to offer you growth opportunities without you advocating for yourself, but being in the position to know what to ask for and position yourself for growth isn't always easy. And it wasn't easy for me. I've
Yeah.
had times where even just advocating around, I look young and I'm short. Don't call me young in a meeting in front of people. Like,
Mm,
don't allude to my age despite the fact that maybe I am the youngest person in the room, but you still include me as a subject matter expert. So
right.
there's constantly this dance of like navigating, adjusting, pushing a little on the boundaries, but then being respectful and really, hopefully having someone on the leadership team that you can go to and trust to really help you make those changes because it's never really going to happen on your own. You need to spend the time building, relationships and alliances in your company, outside your company. Kind of your reputation's the biggest thing that's going to drive your change.
Yeah, you need people talking about you in a positive way when you're not in the room.
Yeah,
That's so important. And I think to your point about what to ask for, how to ask for it, but when to ask for it's a big deal too. You
yeah.
can't be 5 minutes into a job and be like, I'm ready for a promotion. You're gonna get laughed out of the office.
And it's going
Um,
to hurt your credibility in the future.
yeah, it's I mean, I always tell people, and I do a lot of different trainings with young sales teams. And I tell them, I'm like, look, you got to read the room. In every room you walk into, I don't care, even
Yeah.
if you're in by yourself, like if the plant is dead, water the plant, like figure out,
Yeah.
like scope out what's going on in the room. Did some big deal just fall through? Guess what? There's gonna be people fighting for their jobs to keep it. They're not gonna promote you. Like
Yeah.
again, have a little bit of awareness. And I love what you said too about respect, right? Doing it in a respectful way. Because I think that's one of the biggest pieces that's fallen through the cracks lately. Everyone can have boundaries, have them, set
Yeah.
them, voice them, but don't be an ass about it. And
Yeah.
I think that's the bigger piece of it is really just like respect goes both ways for sure, but it's also a skill that many people don't have these days. I feel like some of the people coming up are just out
Yeah.
there sometimes.
I think something I've learned as I've kind of worked through my career is as much as I know what my boundaries and my goals are, the best way to be successful is to understand what the people around me's boundaries and goals are. Because if you can help someone else achieve something that they want to achieve, and just because someone's more senior than you doesn't mean that they don't have goals too, that you
Right.
might be able to help with. So, how can A become indispensable, but also show the emotional intelligence to realize that there's people other than yourself that are struggling, that are, maybe your boss is going through a divorce and hasn't told you, and they're being a real dick about it. And did you ever stop to say, you look like you're having a rough time. Do you want to go get some coffee? Is everything okay? Like,
Yeah.
I think that having that emotional intelligence is such a kind of way that people can show maturity despite however many years of professional experience you have and show that, yes, I want my boundaries respected, but I trust that you're going to respect them because I've already showed that I respect yours.
Yeah. That's a great point. And I think it goes back to, and I based on some of your stories, I think we're probably around the same age, same generation. And I think that your example of working in the beauty industry, which was not necessarily what you trained for, what you expected necessarily, but the way that things are done, right? I mean, I think
Yeah.
people are almost against, it's probably not fair to say, but almost against learning. It's like, all right, I graduated. I know everything I need to know. And it's like you don't even realize what you pick up just kind of like by osmosis. It's not the right word, but you know what I mean. Like
Yeah.
by being around the way a boardroom should look, you know, it's so important. And those are little things you don't think about until that next time when you're like, oh, wait a minute, water pitcher here closer to the clients. I don't need water. The client needs whatever, like
Right.
it's a
Well,
big deal.
I think also because so many people are working from home now, that skill set kind of goes away, and then all of a sudden you're in an in-person meeting and it's like everyone forgot how to behave together in a room.
Yeah.
And I think sales is a really great example of you should look around the room and say, is there water? Are there notebooks? Is the room the right temperature that someone's going to be comfortable? Is it before lunch and someone's going to be hungry and rushing to get out of the room? Like all of
Right.
those things actually do matter. And when you're working from home, they don't matter because it's not your job to feed them. But it could
Right.
be. I've had people send me a DoorDash gift card to use to order myself lunch if we have a lunch meeting.
Oh, that's
Like,
kind of cool. I
and
love
it's
that.
so thoughtful. They're like, I know that, there's this big meeting. It's during, 11 to 2 your time. We're going to email you a DoorDash gift card so that you can make sure you have lunch. Because they're smart. It's not that
Yeah.
they're nice, they're smart. They know that if I'm sitting there looking at my watch and hungry and hangry, I'm likely going to have more criticism for what they're presenting. I'm not going to be distracted.
Yeah.
And I think all of those little things matter. And it's just taking the time to stop and, like, again, think about other people's needs as you're thinking about your own plans.
Yeah, that's a great point. I think it comes down to, I always say in sales training, anticipate the objection, right? So
Yeah,
if I'm sitting here trying to sell you a very expensive tool, right? You as a consumer know that I'm baking in all my other costs and blah blah blah, but let me tell you about costs when you have a fully remote staff. You don't have many. Right? So if
right.
I'm at least like you didn't bring me as the consumer into your office, you didn't get me lunch, you didn't pay for any of the niceties, the pleasantries, whatever. But then you send me something like that, I'm going to be like, "Oh, I see. They still care. They're still
Yeah,
trying to make it feel in person. They're investing in our relationship." Like again, should that be
yeah,
what makes or breaks a deal? No, but is it? Absolutely. Or could be.
yeah.
Could
The
be.
devil's in the details. Like,
Yeah.
send me a nice, I love you. I've had people say, oh, I know you love UConn basketball. I've had vendors send me a UConn basketball hat or a
Oh,
mug and
nice.
be like, it was great meeting you. Like, good luck this March. And I'm like, I remember that still, and I could tell you who it was and what they were selling
Right.
me. And like, did the deal happen? Maybe yes or no. But if that person calls me again, it's a call I'll pick up no matter where they
Right.
work.
Yeah. It's funny too, I think, when we talk about like reading the room and how things are supposed to be, right? You and I have our vision of what it's supposed to be. Our bosses, assuming they're 10 to 15 to 20 years older or whatever,
Yeah,
used to be, not so much anymore, they have their way, right? So if I, a 22-year-old salesperson, am taking out the CEO and I manage to get that meeting, I'm taking you to dinner, guess what? I better know how to order, pick up the tab, make it clear of what we're doing, whether we're drinking at
yeah,
lunch or happy hour, then dinner, whatever. And I train a lot of people and I'm like, you have to understand this stuff because it's the little things. It's you take out any chance of an objection, any chance of a this kid doesn't know what they're doing, right? Which
yeah,
is the mindset of the generational gaps. It's a big deal.
yeah.
It's a very big deal. So let's talk a little bit about mentors, though, because you were
Okay.
lucky enough to have someone who took you under their wing in your time in the beauty space, and like you said, gave you some hand-me-downs so you looked the part, right? And regardless of whether that's a whatever it is, right? How do you go about getting a mentor? Like I feel like for the kid, like the young people, like recent grads, it's pretty easy, right? You don't know
Yeah.
anything, so you can get anyone. What about for people who are a little bit more advanced in their career? Do you think those people still need a mentor?
I do. And to be honest, as someone with over 15 years experience, I'm struggling to find one right now. I had one where no longer mentor-mentee relationship, and I'm looking for a new one, and it's really hard. But what I've done to fill the gap and what I recommend, I always recommend to like the Wise women, as being on the board of Wise, I'm constantly pushing mentorship as one of our three pillars. And I always say, like, look around the room at these events. These are the people you're going to go to for professional advice. They're going to be your peers that come up in the industry with you and are navigating the same problems. And then they're going to be peers that maybe one of you jumps ahead and gets some really crazy, amazing job, and people are going to kill for their mentorship, and they're going to be a friend of yours that you're able to pick up the phone and actually pick their brain. So
Right.
maintaining relationships with your peers as you rise through your career is the best kind of the best place I get advice these days. Is I'm so lucky to have established these great friendships in the sports world, both in the Bay Area and then just around the country. It's a small community. And knowing that you can pick up the phone and say, I know you work at an NFL team. I'm renegotiating an agreement. I'm thinking this, but it seems like I'm getting pushback. Like, what would you do? And just having someone to be able to bounce ideas off who really gets the work you do makes a really
Hmm.
big difference. I
Yeah.
also think like mentorship can go both ways. So I make a huge effort to mentor, but really just build relationships with women that are younger than me.
Hmm.
Because you don't only learn from someone who's older than you. Like that's
Right.
such a silly concept that a mentor has to be older and more experienced. A mentor should just be someone with a different perspective. So I really take a lot of time working with younger women in our chapter and saying, what are you working on? What are you struggling with? What projects are you working on? Because that might help me be a better leader with the team that I manage. It might help me structure my team differently when I see how their company's structuring something. So I feel like the piece with mentorship is everyone kind of could be a mentor, but finding a few kind of like core people that you trust and establish this relationship with, but invest in it. Like that's the thing is the big thing with mentorship is you really have to invest in the relationship and don't make it feel transactional.
Yeah. How do you go about doing that? Because I mean, I have a really good network, very strong, very curated because we chat, but never in a, I don't want to say never, but how do you make it feel like it's not transactional?
Yeah. I think it's first starts with finding your people. Something I've recently kind of discovered as getting older is just because someone wants to spend time with you doesn't mean that's how you want to spend your time. And
Ooh, I like
you
that.
have to want to be there. So maybe there's 20 people that you could be in a relationship with professionally, but only five of them feel really good. They're people you'd want to be friends with. They're people you have things in common with. They're people that you just kind of like vibe with a little more deeply. And frankly, like, the question I always say is like, can I feel vulnerable with this person?
Mm,
Not just, I'm not trying to prove something to them. So,
yeah.
I think you're great and you have a really impressive job, but I don't feel comfortable letting my guard down with this person. That's not someone that I'm going to establish this kind of mentor friendship with.
Right.
Um, I think the best way to do it is approach it just like you would a friend. I go out and we play golf with a bunch of the women that I'm friends with in Wise, and we
Oh,
play
nice.
golf together. We meet at co-working space together and just co-work for the day. We'll grab happy hour drinks and then get dinner. And it doesn't feel like this force, like, can I sit down and pick your brain? Which I think people, especially with the gig economy, all of a sudden people are getting paid to have their brains picked, and you should to an extent. But when you're
Right.
with a friend, you weave in and out. These are the books I'm reading. This is the TV I like. And these are the struggles I have at work. And these are my wins. And let's all open a bottle of wine and cheers and celebrate them together. And I think the relationships that I have that are the most successful is when all of those things are happening at the same time. It's not
Yeah.
just someone that's like, I'm really interested in the work you're doing. Can I buy you a coffee? I never
Right.
fully leave like with my bucket full. The time
Mm.
that I feel really fulfilled is when it's someone that you want to celebrate their wins together. You want to
Yeah.
go through the hard stuff. You want to navigate change together. And just like any real relationship where, it's not a superficial friend, it's like a real friend. I think
Right.
mentorship and professional relationships, I've found them to be successful by kind of seeing them the same way.
Yeah. I love that. I think God, it's such a good point. And it feels like a, well, yeah, obviously moment. Like you don't think of it until someone says it and then you're like, "Oh, duh," like and it's not, and I don't mean that in any certain way like, yeah, no kidding,
Yeah,
because I asked the question, right? Like but when the minute you say it, you're like, yeah. And maybe I can speak from personal. I overthink it because I always feel like I might see you every week, but when I do need something, I call you separate from the time when I see you every week, and it's
right.
like, hey, I do need to pick your brain, even though in that moment I feel transactional, yet we've been going to lunch, like hanging
Right. You
out.
put the
It's
work in.
weird. Yeah. It's such a strange thing. Sometimes I think we think too much. Sometimes
Yeah.
I think I think too much.
I think a lot of us do. I think that navigating the professional line with friendship could be a whole nother podcast because think
Yeah.
about it. I have friends that work with competitors. I
Hmm.
have a friend who sits as a competitor to one of my clients, and that line of what we can talk about, we both need to really respect each other in our
Yeah.
conversations and say, I saw that you did that deal. Congrats, that was awesome, but I respect her enough to not ask how much it was and what the
Right.
terms are so that I can go talk to my client about it. Or if someone
Right.
does tell me something confidential, again, your reputation is so important. How do you know to maintain confidentiality? Because you don't ever want to be the person that's known to be blabbing about other people's business dealings.
True.
So even if you are trusted with confidential information, maybe use it strategically, but don't go talk about it. Lock it up. Be a grown
Right.
up.
Right. Yeah, we're playing the big kid games now. Like again, read the room, respect. Look at these threads
Yeah.
that we're weaving through this conversation.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this for some of the younger kids, right? And I say kids, it's so not nice to say that, but the younger generation, those coming up now who are
Yeah.
watching this podcast, getting tremendous information and insights, how do you recommend people celebrate their own wins without constantly feeling like they're name dropping or bragging and by name I mean person or team or whatever. How do they navigate that? How does anybody navigate that?
Yeah. I think that it's different for everyone. I think there's definitely, what is your personal comfort with social media? What is your approach to self-promotion? For me, I open a nice bottle of wine with some friends offline and have a nice celebration if I get a big deal done. Maybe I'm not one to post that necessarily on my LinkedIn. That said, if something that I have a great photo and it's a great event and I want to promote it, then I'll put something on LinkedIn. But I think it's, sorry, understanding. Hold on, let me move the
No
dog.
worries.
Dad, Toby, get out of the picture. My virtual dog. Um, no, I think that everyone has their approach. I am not necessarily, I think as long as your self-promotion feels authentic, it doesn't feel like self-promotion.
Mm,
And being consistent with your content. So I like to share brand activation. So if I'm at a great brand of activation, I'm proud of the work that my team did, then I'm promoting something on LinkedIn, perhaps. If it's
yeah,
something I did personally, I'm more of the camp of like, oh, I did the job that I was paid to do. Like, I don't need to
yeah.
be celebrated for that. I'm celebrated by receiving my paycheck and a nice bonus at the end of the year, perhaps. But I don't need to like toot my own horn every time I do something exciting. That said, my job doesn't require me to do that. I think that some people's jobs do require them to do that, and having a content strategy is a great approach. If
Yeah.
you're in sales and you want to stay relevant and have people see you and see the work and see that you're doing deals and see you moving and shaking, then having a content strategy is really important. What I
Yeah.
do is a little bit more, I'm a consultant. It's not my work that's being highlighted. It's this, my client's success is my success. So if I
Hmm.
have an opportunity to highlight the work that someone that I've contributed to is doing that I'm really proud of and want to, help more people see and expand the reach of it, that's typically more where I'm promoting is, there's not like the team element first myself.
Yeah. Yeah, I would agree with that. I think it's really important to own your success for sure, but it can't feel loosey-goosey, right? I mean,
Yeah.
the strategic piece of it, like there's more strategy involved in everyday life and certainly in social media, the way that has evolved for personal branding, for corporate branding, for all of it. I think it's a slippery slope. It's a fine line. It's whatever other colloquialism you want to say, but it's tough. And I think, I know a couple of people who think every time they breathe in is something to be talked about. It's like,
Well, yeah, and I always find I'm really skeptical when it's really clear someone took an article, put it into ChatGPT, pasted it into their LinkedIn, and all of a sudden they have an opinion that's worth sharing.
hmm
And I think there's two ends to that coin. One, you're literally, if you're not saying anything unique from a unique perspective, like there has to be another reason to do it. And I think for certain
hmm
people, having your name pop up over and over again to build recognition. Again, if you're in sales, that's really important. You literally just need to say something for the sake of your name showing up on someone's LinkedIn feed. They're probably not
yeah,
even reading what you're saying. It's kind of like, SEO for a blog. Like all these companies write blogs because no one's reading the blogs, but instead it makes sure that they pop up from a search perspective. I
yeah,
think a lot of people take that approach on LinkedIn. And as a viewer of the content and someone who's, you know, absorbing the content, I think you need to kind of know where to go for knowledge versus where to just be like, oh yeah, that guy again, right?
right. Yeah, well, and it's very interesting that you say that because people who do that hack the algorithm,
Yeah,
right? And all of a sudden it's like, oh my God, this person is so important. Then you look
right,
at their actual profile and you're like, they don't
right.
even have a business having the opinion that they just had, let alone putting it out into the ether. It's like, really? Like,
Yeah, but it's a smart strategy. It
yeah,
worked.
yeah,
So,
yeah. It's kind of crazy. So let's talk a little bit about your time in when you created your own marketing company. How was that
yeah.
jumping in, full on?
Yeah, so I started Fig Tree Marketing during the pandemic when I was laid off. I didn't have a job. I was doing the startup, but had no income and said, I have this wealth of knowledge. I'm a subject matter expert. Frankly, I need to make some money.
Right.
Um, I'm gonna just find a few clients to help along the way. I have all this knowledge. People are kind of always asking me for advice. I might as well at least open an LLC and try to pay the bills. To be honest, I never really turned it into much of anything. I think I very quickly understood I am not an entrepreneur. I like to work for someone else's company. I like to build within someone else's structure. I am not a new business aggressive person where I have a really hard time going out and trying to land new business for myself. I
Mm,
was very successful and lucky that people came to me and said, oh, so and so recommended I talk to you. And then once I'm in that relationship, it's great. I can do the work and I do
sure.
it very well. But I don't want to be poking and asking for work. It's just so outside of my comfort zone. I would never be a salesperson. My
Yeah.
sister does sales and it makes me want to crawl out of my skin watching her work. And she's amazing at it. And I think that there's just different personality types and skill sets.
Yeah.
Um, I still operate as small projects come in. I've done some really fun rebrands for youth soccer clubs.
Oh, neat.
So really, it's almost like this little like nonprofit, but nonprofit is I like to help smaller companies with projects that typically would just be a little too big and hard for them. So
Mm,
how do you market as a youth soccer club? What does marketing look like for you? Do you need to hire
yeah,
a marketing manager? Great. Let me write the job description, screen people, and help you hire someone so that you're set up for success because I'm not that person. I'm not going to run
right.
your marketing for you. That's just not what I do or what I want to do. But what I can do from like an operations perspective is give you the knowledge to make decisions to set yourself up for longer success. And that's what I really like doing. I do it now at Playbook with my clients is helping them operationalize their sports sponsorships, build strategy, think really future forward.
Yeah,
And that was kind of what I was doing at Fig Tree. Honestly, to advice to anyone who wants to start an LLC, it's not very lucrative because you're paying a lot of money on taxes. Like
yeah,
I constantly was just taking a big chunk of the money and putting it aside to pay taxes, and it wasn't enough to really warrant being a full-time gig. And if I wanted it to
right.
be, I would have had to be way more aggressive with it,
Yeah,
and strategic financially. And that's just not what I was interested in doing. But I keep it open and it's fun from time to time to do a little small project and help out a friend and just have a legal entity that I can bill under from a, legal safety perspective.
yeah. I love that. I I I love that because you learned even more about yourself, right? Like
Yeah,
it, they're not all gems, right? Everything we all each touch is not going to be $1 billion everything. And guess what? It doesn't need to be,
it doesn't
right?
have to be.
It doesn't have to be. It doesn't, you don't have to have a side gig. You don't have to stick with something that you don't like doing. Like once you learn about it, about yourself, you don't have to grin and bear it just because you started something. Like pivot.
Yeah. Well, I
It's
think it's also calculated risks, like understanding where you want to invest your time, knowing that even if it doesn't work out, you've learned something valuable, like the startup, you know, fine, starting a tech company wasn't for me, but I learned so much about NIL and compliance and building technology and
yeah,
operations of forming a company and raising money for a company that it's okay. I still own some equity in the company and I've learned so much that there's no like regret about
yeah.
it. I think it was a calculated risk that I made and set very realistic expectations about, and then moved on to the next thing. And it's great. I get to use that knowledge now with my clients all the time.
Yeah. And in healthcare and especially as they continue, I mean, all that knowledge that you have is absolutely going to play in to the tech world and AI and everything, automation that we're seeing the revolution now. Even just knowing enough to be dangerous is enough,
Yeah,
and being able to speak intelligently on X, Y, or Z just gives you that much more credibility, gives you that much more of a sticking point when they say, "Oh yeah, well, my account rep or my main contact is Ariel, like she knows what she's talking about." Even if it was only one little nugget that you ever happened to pull from like
right.
way back in the quiver or whatever.
Yeah, and I think, you make a good point. Like sounding like you know what you're talking about is a big part of it.
Yeah,
And we live in an incredible world where if you don't have the information, you can get it very, very quickly.
right.
And I think that it's really noticeable when someone is hungry for knowledge and filling gaps that they don't have versus just talking for the sake of talking and not necessarily actually saying something. So if I
Hmm.
have a client who asks, about AI and I don't know the answer, I can find it out very quickly while still on the call without ever having to give any indication that I don't know what they're talking about because I
Right.
have three devices in front of me that have ChatGPT and Google.
Yeah.
And you can become like an armchair expert in anything
Yeah.
if you just take like the little bit of interest in figuring it out.
Right. And that's the thing. You don't have to become an expert. There are plenty of
No,
people who only focus on that. If you can just drop a nugget here or there that's useful and, maybe you need to go get more information after the fact, fine, but at least you don't sound like an idiot, you know, like it's
Yeah.
perfectly okay to multitask and use it to your benefit, not just for the sake of saying you're a good multitasker, you know,
Yeah.
like so many people do. So I can't even believe we've been talking as long as we have. It's flown by and amazing, and I love it. How should people, like, what are you working on now? Like, who should get in contact with you? Who are you looking to connect
Yeah.
with? Like, talk to us about that.
For sure. So, personally, I would say I've been doing a lot of mentoring on helping people like apply and interview for jobs, which is very funny because it's not a strength that I feel like I have for myself. But a lot of my mentees have landed new jobs recently after us doing some coaching. So I think I'm a better coach than a doer, those who can't do coach. So anyone who kind of wants advice on navigating the job hunt, interview prep, I love doing. Reach out to me on LinkedIn and I will always give you, at least 30 minutes of my time. And as long as you make the effort to give me the context and the info, I love helping people find new jobs and move
Awesome.
around and feel like they have control in a time that feels really bleak a lot of the times for people.
Mhm.
I think job hunting has a lot of emotional levels. You're being reviewed and rejected by someone who's never met you and maybe only has 30 minutes to get to know you.
Right.
Obviously, your finances and your security in your home sometimes are tied to this. So I think just having someone in your corner to cheerlead you a little bit goes a really long way.
Yeah.
So I try really hard to be that person anytime asked. So definitely reach out for that. And then at Playbook, we work with healthcare companies, insurance, pet care, kind of anyone around the country who's looking to do sponsorships that are really kind of community value and like community based. So taking most of our clients are nonprofit, many of them are nonprofit hospitals. How do you use your sponsorships to lift all the ships within your organization, whether it's community benefit, employee engagement and relations, fundraising for your foundations, bringing out things like breast cancer testing or prostate cancer testing into the communities? These hospitals have all of these resources and
Yeah.
layering on the sports sponsorship just amplifies their reach so exponentially within the market
Right.
that that's what we do. We're a super niche agency. We help healthcare organizations with their sports and entertainment sponsorship. So if you work in healthcare and want to sponsor anything, come find me because that's definitely our sweet spot. We're really good
Nice.
at it.
Good, very cool. Awesome. Well, I'm so thankful that you took the time to chat with me. I mean, this has been, I love talking with people who have experienced a lot of different things, but also have like good stories and have taken something from it. You know, so many people are just kind of like, yeah, I did these things and like here I am. And it's like, cool story, bro. Like,
Yeah.
yes, go on, you know? So I appreciate so much like the candor for one, but then also the quality of our conversation, just fantastic. Really,
Thank
really
you.
appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, Jessica. This was a lot of fun, and I'm happy to chat more anytime.
Awesome. All right, well, you heard it here. This is the latest episode of Bright Ideas. I'm Jess Duemig. This is Ariel Feigenbaum, and we'll see you on the next episode.